Thank you. So thank you for this chance, and thank you to TOC for letting me come up here and speak today. When I first came up here, when I was invited to be a speaker, I really didn't know what to talk about because I'm not here to talk about some new innovation. I'm not here to talk about some new way of doing business. Like I've been attending these sessions, and it's absolutely phenomenal what you guys are talking about, but it's space age to me. And so I thought about it. What am I here to talk about? And I guess I kind of boiled it down to the essence of this conference, which is it's the tools of change, or rather, it's the tools for change. Because what's happening in the Arab publishing market, and do forgive me because I am going to be talking just about the Arab publishing market, is that we are considerably behind what Western publishers are doing today, where a lot of your innovations are space age to us. So now I'd like to just kind of get into it. Now, before I begin, I'd like to just ask a favor from each and every one of you. I will be talking about the Arab publishing industry, but I would like you to have a little switch in your mind and think to yourself, emerging economies publishing industry. Because I think the lessons that we can learn from an industry like the Arab market are lessons that are applicable to other emerging economies. And the other thing I would also like you to ask is that, well, keep in mind that the Arab publishing market or emerging economy markets are so fresh and so ripe for new players to come in that it is kind of like the wild frontier. It is the wild, wild east, if you will. And so I would like you all to just take a moment and think to yourself, if nuclear war were to strike and only publishers survived, how would you build the publishing industry today? What would you do different? What would you bring from the past? And what would you completely change? Okay. So I don't know if anyone knows who this man is. It's Joseph Whittaker. Now, when I live in London now, and I was fortunate enough to have an opportunity to spend a week at Nielsen Books, where I really got to sit down with each one of the department heads and the project managers, spent 3 hours with them, each one of them, over a 5-day period. And on the first day, I was given a presentation as to what Nielsen's Books history is. And it started with a man named Joseph Whittaker, who went around to a bunch of bookstores and publishers and got their catalogs and kind of binded them together, and thus creating the first books in print catalog. And what was shocking to me was, out of the entire week, what I most related to was the description of the UK publishing industry in the 1850s. Perfectly vertically integrated publishers who are publishers, printers, bookstores, distributors, the lack of certain kinds of infrastructure such as subsidiary rights trading. It was just, it's just not there. So, what's it about? It's about trying to find the hidden gem. It's about the story, right? I mean, I hear content is king, then I hear content isn't king, and I just don't know what to believe anymore. But what I know we should believe is that we're all looking for that great story to tell. Whether it's fiction or nonfiction, it doesn't matter. We're just looking for it. And, you know, when you think of the Arab publishing market, when you think of Arabic books, we all know Aladdin, we all know Alibaba, we all know Sinbad. But that comes from one book. What about the 60,000 other titles that are published every year in this industry? I mean, this is a disputed number. I'm going to stick to it, though. 60,000 titles every year. That's 60,000 novels, history, politics, religious studies, cookbooks, books on astrology. I mean, it's just incredible. And they're sitting completely in isolation. So, a little bit about the market. 325 million Arabs, 120,000 of them live in this city. 4 million Arabs live in the US, a bit more than that live in Europe, an estimated 20 million live outside of the Arab world. It is a market. It is a market the size of the US. It is there. It is just waiting to be tapped into. Of course, how you tap into it and how you get there, that's another story. So let's manage expectations. I'm an Arabic e-publisher, and when I tell my writers ebooks, I'm sure this is what they think of. I still get phone calls from people saying, I ordered a book from you 3 weeks ago and you haven't delivered it yet. So it is another level of development. So before we can really get into where are the opportunities, let's take a look at what are the problems. So what are the problems? The first problem is distribution. So we did a study where we took 150 Arab titles, from the creme de la creme of Arabic authors to the, oh my God, I can't believe he got published. And we looked around and we tried to see where were these books available. The top 10% was available. This was an Egypt-only study, by the way. The top 10% was available along conventional distribution routes, so that means it wasn't available everywhere, but you could find it. The bottom 10%, publisher's office, author's home, that was it. But the middle 80% was only available within a 5-kilometer radius of the physical publishing house. So, in other words, here's a picture of downtown Cairo, where most of the publishing houses are. This is what the distribution radius looked like. So you can imagine what it means for the city. You can imagine what it means for the country. You can imagine what it means for the world. There was one exception to this, and this is what this video is. I put it on silence because there's a lot of swear words in Arabic in the background. I know you wouldn't understand, but my mother would, so... Anyway, this area is called Al-Azbakiyya, and Al-Azbakiyya is, to me, a far greater phenomenon of Egypt than the pyramids. Because what it is it's a series of 3-meter by 2-meter kiosks with books from floor to ceiling, wall to wall, and each kiosk specializes in a different kind of book. So you'll have books on Islamic Turath, you'll have books on history, and you even have, much to the delight of a couple people I met earlier in this conference, a kiosk dedicated to Harlequin romance novels. So it's just an incredible phenomenon. And if you ever come to Egypt, try to find this place. It's a bit tucked away, but it's far more interesting than the pyramids. Well, don't tell anyone I said that. Anyway, all right, the dirty C word, censorship. It's a problem. It exists. I know that a lot of people get really excited when they hear the word censorship and just, want to charge. But the reality is, it's the reality of any immature market. I mean, even your own industry had censorship not too long ago. So it is the best way to combat censorship isn't to condemn the censors, it's to develop the market. So there are 3 kinds of censorship. There's the on-purpose censorship, and that's the censorship that is done by the government saying, no, these books are not allowed on these bookshelves, and they do their best to stop them from getting anywhere. But the far more dangerous type of censorship is self-censorship, and that's because most of us wake up in the morning and do not think to ourselves, how can I get into jail today? Right? Authors in the Arab world, we know what the no-no topics are. We know what we shouldn't write about, so we don't, because we don't want to spend time in jail. And this is very dangerous. I mean, this is something, again, that will change with the market's maturity. And then, of course, there's unconscious censorship, and I'd like to tell you a little story about that. So Arabic doesn't really have a viable OCR solution, at least that I'm aware of, and so we retype the books often. And so we have a team of typists about, I call it the beehive. You walk in there and there's, and people are typing away, so we have editors to check for typos, of course, and we have editors to check for the fact that a lot of typists just going a mile a minute will skip a line because their eye just skips it. And when we noticed this one book was missing 3 pages, and so we kind of went, well, what happened here? And we took a look at the book, and if I remember off the top of my head, it was a book written about 1968, and it was referring to all the news events, like the events that hit the headlines in the major newspapers, and how it impacted modern-day Egypt. And what was amazing, one of the articles came up on was that the effigy of the Virgin Mary appeared in Coptic Cairo on some church walls. Now, the author isn't saying whether or not this actually happened. He's merely saying that this was in the newspapers and this had an impact on modern-day Egypt. And these were the 3 pages missing. And so when we went to the typist and said, well, what happened? The typist very innocently looked up at us and said, it's not true, so I cut it out. The thing is, he wasn't doing anything malicious. If you believe that malice, if that's the right word, is something done it has to have be done on purpose. It was just what he thought was the right thing to do. And again, this will be combated as the market matures. Okay, another issue that we struggle with, international standards. So, do we all know BISEG? Okay, the U.S. system of classification. I give a lot of training seminars, and I'll ask people about BISEG in the Arab world. I'll get a blank look. When I ask them about BIC, which is the UK classification system, they ask me if it's related to the PIN. When I ask them about MARC, which is the library system of book shelving, they'll say, and I've heard this, they'll say, I knew a MARC once, he was very nice. When I ask them about Onyx, they'll say the stone. And then, of course, ePub, it's a virtual place to go have a virtual beer, which fits the culture very well. So, before I get this to the next standard, I would just like, if anyone is sitting next to someone from Bowker, you might want to hold their hand, because it's not going to be pleasant. The ISBN. I know that you all think the ISBN is very important. I know there's a lot of debates, and I read an article, is the ISBN dead? And, well, if the ISBN is dead, which I don't think it is, but should it be? I mean, it never lived in our part of the world. It never existed. So we thought that 55% of books published had ISBNs. That's what we thought, but we were actually wrong. Now, we based this number on a database of 800,000 books published in the Arab world since 1956. And when you filter that database to take into account when the ISBN agencies were introduced into the region, so for example in Egypt it was 1979, reintroduced in 81 because the first introduction just didn't take, we got the number at 55%. A year later, we did a study where we interviewed 2,000 people, publishers, authors, bookstores, pretty much the entire value chain, distributors, and we discovered that the number was actually more like 90% of books have ISBNs. But the first number is true. The issue is that the people who have the ISBNs aren't even bothering to print them onto the book. They're not even bothering to display them on a website. It's a dead number. It doesn't, and why? I mean, can we fault them? The ISBN offers no value added to an Arab publisher. It merely is viewed as another censorship tool. So can we blame them that the ISBN isn't used? So what do we do? What do we do? Like, what are we going to do about this? Am I the harbinger of doom? If you've tasted my cooking, yes. But I don't think so. I don't think I'm here to say, whoa, just lament. I actually see a lot of opportunity because you have an industry that is just ripe to be entered. You have an industry which needs the major players. And if I may have a cheesy moment with you all, Albert Einstein once said, if I've seen further than others, it's because I stood on the shoulder of giants. Well, the Arab industry doesn't have any giants on which shoulders to stand on. So forgive the cheesiness, but it's true. So what do we do about it? Okay, the mobile phone. We all know about how the mobile phone has unlimited reach, and it's true. You will have villages in Egypt that will not have a library, will not have a bookstore, but will have 2 or 3 mobile phone shops. So you can have unlimited reach through the mobile phone. And to give you some statistics from Vodafone Egypt, 80 million people live in Egypt, 35 million are yet to connect, 45 million have a mobile phone, 15 million connect to the internet through a home line, whether it's dial-up or DSL, and 5 million connect through their 3G. And what's amazing about this number is that 3G was only introduced a year and a half ago. And what's further amazing is that the reason why the number is so low is because there's not enough 3G-worthy devices in the industry. It's not that people aren't wanting to use the technology, it's that they don't yet have the ability to purchase the technology. And that's changing rapidly. This is 8 months old. I wish I could have gotten an updated one because it would have been amazing. And then, of course, you have ePlatforms. You know, through an e-platform, through the internet, you can reach anywhere in the world. And a quick story about that is an author of ours came in after having sold one book and earning royalty of less than 50 American pennies, and came into our offices with over $20 worth of cake. And we know him to be a rational person. And we wanted to know, why are you spending, 20 times more money than what you earned from us? And his answer was, no, you don't understand. My book was bought in New Zealand. I never thought it would be read in New Zealand. And what's sad is that he only ever sold that book with us. But that's another story. And it's true. I mean, there was one customer in New Zealand who would buy from us about once every 6 weeks. And I kind of have a secret dream to go down there, find this person, and thank him. POD, great bridge builder. Right? I mean, and again, you know this. I'm just repeating things that you've heard throughout the conference. But think of it. POD is a cheap, easy way for you to take your books over there and also bring the Arabic books over here. It's a fantastic bridge builder to try to figure out what works. And it's a way that you can service the 4 million Arabs living in the U.S. But what's most important is that you think differently. Okay, the ISBN, it's not there. That's a problem. But there are other standards out there. You can use other ways. I mean, Google Book Search opened up their system so you don't need to have an ISBN to be on it. There are other standards like the ISTC that are coming out that can be used in interesting ways. So you just have to think differently on how you approach this. I don't know if any of you had an opportunity to see Arthur Atwell's speech earlier this week, but he talks about the last mile, in which you enable and empower the people who are on the ground to figure out how to sell your book for you. And I just think it is an interesting concept, that you find a way to deal with these Ezbekeya people and use them because they know what they're doing. They are the industry experts. And this is what is most important. It's you must think differently. You must open your systems to different ways. And you must accept that any market of this size, and please, I know I'm talking about the Arab market, but I really do mean emerging economies in general, that it is a powerful new market to enter. So what's important? Introduce yourself to our part of the sandbox. Come play over there for a little bit. We have book fairs. Come see what's going on. You know how to do your work. I'm not going to stand up here and give a whole bunch of suggestions on what to do because each one of you has a unique concept. If anything, the question that I asked myself when Andrew invited me to speak today was, why now? Why am I being, I've been at this for a few years now. Why am I up here today? And not, why wasn't I up here 2 years ago? Or why won't I be up here in 5 years? But why today? And that is kind of the crux of this, is that today is the time in which you can take a look at these emerging economies and use these new technologies to your advantage, so that you can open up new markets for yourself and so that you can open up new lines of business. We don't know what will work, but I'll just give you a couple success stories. For example, Bangladesh, there was an SMS-based Learn English tool. I believe it was SMS-based. They had 300,000 subscribers in the first week. There is a market there to be tapped, and it's just a matter of trying to tap it. So I'd like to thank you all for hearing my speech, and I'd like to thank TOC for having me up today. and I hope to see you in Cairo.